Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on what time you're watching this. It's afternoon for me now. So it's been a few weeks, a lot of big things going on with our recruitment and retention grant that we're operating under here at Boonville. We've got a billboard up now. We're running ads at the high school, at Starmount High School, during the football games, and that'll happen at the basketball games, wrestling matches, and things like that as well. So a lot of cool things at our disposal for advertising the need for new volunteer firefighters here in the 21st century. New website has been put into place, pretty similar to the old one, but a new service provider. It's a whole lot more efficient, and very happy with that as well. So anyway, what we're here for today is to wrap up the front line, so to speak, of our primary fleet here at Station 1, and we're wrapping it up with Tanker 13. This is going to be a lot shorter video. For those of you that know me and know how much I go into detail, you're like, he's lying, but I'm really not. This is going to be pretty short and sweet because Tanker 13, all the tankers in our department at least, we're going to look at them as a big engine company. We've been over the engine company squad, pretty much a version of an engine company, but looking at a basic engine company, a tanker in our department is pretty much a big version of an engine company. Main differences being the water capacity on board, a lot more water, and we'll go over the specs on this truck in particular. Also, the way this truck and tankers in general offload water at a fire scene. We'll kind of discuss some of those things and how that works. There are some places that have trucks that they refer to as a tender. They also might refer to it as a tanker, but in some places a tanker doesn't have a fire pump. For us in our department, and pretty much every department that I can think of in this county, all their tankers have a fire pump. I don't believe there's any in our immediate area that have a tank and no pump, or what we would call a tender. But anyway, we'll jump into Tanker 13 and get the walk around done. Here it comes. Okay, so here is Tanker 13. It's a 2011 Kenworth chassis. It has seating for technically 3 firefighters. The center bench seat position is a little cramped, especially if you've got your gear and stuff in there. We try to not carry our gear in the cab of that truck or this truck just because it is so cramped. There is some storage space, thankfully, in the compartments for that. But technically the truck does have seating for 3 personnel. That's a big change from the other 3 trucks you've seen. This is a conventional cab chassis in comparison to the custom cab trucks that we've seen. Not as many customizations in this truck. It's kind of a, I hate to use the word cookie cutter, but any 2011 model Kenworth in this lineup would effectively be almost the same. So that's kind of the difference in terms of the custom to the conventional cab chassis. It was built by 4 guys. It was the actual manufacturer of the fire truck portion of this truck. So the installation of the pump house, the compartment body, all that was done at 4 guys who acquired the chassis from Kenworth, of course. And that again is the difference, say, from Pierce, the other 3 trucks manufacturer. Their manufacturing process is a turnkey job at one facility. They build the chassis, the cab, the compartments, the whole thing. So benefit to these trucks is they are a little bit cheaper in most cases, but there's some trade-offs. Again, you don't get some of the personalizations. It's difficult to get the storage space, again, in the cab that we've seen on those trucks. But generally, the way this truck operates, we don't necessarily have to have as much manpower operating this truck It really depends on the nature of the call once we arrive, but if it's a significant size fire, this truck's not necessarily going to remain on the scene. It's very likely that it's going to arrive on the scene, give its initial load of water, and then leave, go to a field site, get more water, and come back. Now that's for a significant size fire. More manageable size fire, this truck's probably going to arrive on the scene, as well as multiple other tankers from other fire departments, and they're going to offload their water in one of a couple different ways. And if we're able to get the fire under control as we would expect to in a more manageable sized fire, of course that would be the goal anyway, they may not have to necessarily set up what we would call a water shuttle operation, which is what I was describing, where they arrive on the scene, dump their water, leave and go get more, and then come back. That is a tactic that we do often have to use, in particular in the rural areas of our community and surrounding fire districts where we do not have fire hydrants supplied from the towns or from the county. So they're having to get water either back in those towns from a traditional fire hydrant, or possibly going to a pond or a creek that is designated as a fill site for the fire department, and get water from there. So anyway, that in a nutshell is the major job description or duty of a tanker, is to haul water to a traditionally rural fire scene and then serve as a initial water supply in the earlier stages of the fire attack operation, and then if necessary, dictated by the size of the building, size of the fire, things like that, potentially go get more water and then bring it back. So I was talking about manpower earlier in this video, and I don't want to misconstrue that in rural operations we're not strapped for manpower. We very well often are. What I mean is that the task of hauling water back and forth is typically accomplishable by the driver, maybe one other person assisting, which typically there's a designated water supply officer in a bigger operation that manages the water supply operation at the fire scene, and they stay there. But the process to fill up and offload is typically manageable by just the driver. Certainly helpful to have an assistant, but it's not going to require a larger team of firefighters as it would on direct suppression operations. Now that being said, don't get me wrong, I would love for this truck to be a custom style chassis on a personal note, because if we do have those opportunities to roll out with a full crew, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, then 3 or 4 of those folks can go assist in suppression, and then 1 or 2 again stay back and help out with the water supply operation. So that is one limitation that we kind of do have here. We're limited to 2 or 3 guys riding in this truck, and then the rest have to either come in a different truck, personal vehicles, things like that. So that's kind of what I meant by the manpower situation as it relates to the seating capacity in this truck. But we make it work. This is a very common configuration. That's probably about 50-50 as far as what I would call the large volume tankers, that being tankers that are over 2,500 gallons of water on board. It's about 50-50 in this county as far as departments that run custom chassis versus conventional chassis. So both of our tankers here, this one included obviously, again, is a conventional chassis. On into a few of the specs. I mentioned the tank size a while ago on some trucks. So 3,000 gallons is the largest capacity in this county currently. We're actually a little bit under that on this truck at 2,500 gallons of water. Not really a huge deal, but trade-off on that is the truck's a little bit shorter in height. There's some advantages to that as far as getting down some tight access driveways, things like that. More water is going to equate to a larger tank, which means a higher truck or a longer truck, and that gets into some maneuverability and access issues. So 2,500 is kind of a good a good sweet spot in a way. Again, don't take it the wrong way. I'd love to have 3,000 just because that's more water, and very often that is a problem for us out in the rural areas, maintaining enough water. So luckily, as I've said previously, we get 4 departments that come assist us on all structure fires. So they're also bringing tankers of their own that are 2,000 to 3,000 gallons on board as well. As far as the pump on this truck, it's a single stage 1250 GPM pump, so pretty adequate to sustain most rural firefighting operations. If you remember back to this discussion on engine 13, kind of how it functioned in a rural firefighting capacity as far as water supply, you saw that Siamese valve on the back, and we discussed tankers supplying water through that Siamese valve. And so if you imagine water's coming out of here through the large 5-inch hose flowing into that Siamese valve on engine 13, and then as this truck nears becoming empty, another tanker that would arrive on the scene, be it from us or a different agency, would make the connection, very similar to this right here, to the second side of that Siamese valve. And then just before this truck runs out of water, they would throttle up their pump to around the same pump pressure and keep that water supply sustained. And then that's when this truck would make the decision based on command and the water supply officer's needs, whether or not it's going to just remain on the scene out of the way, or more than likely go back and fill up somewhere and come back with more water. So in a nutshell, that's how water supply is initially managed on the majority of our rural fires. Now, that is offloading the water by pumping it off through the pump. The other option that this truck and pretty much all tankers have are to dump the water off of these chutes. So this one's a manual. There's a lot of trucks that have electric motors over a hydraulic cylinder that runs these valves. There's also some trucks that have valves off the sides of the truck. In this case, we have just the manual off the rear, but we do carry up top, and you really can't see it right now, an elbow that attaches on here that can turn the water left or right, so we can change the direction that we dump. And then here's an extension to also go on to that to help us in case we're in a tight spot as far as where the drop tanks may be sat at. And so the drop tanks are what we would dump the water off into. And I'm not going to fold it down, but behind this big diamond tread box here is the drop tank. Most of you in the community may have seen these before. It's basically a big folding expandable swimming pool. It's a metal frame with a heavy duty vinyl type tarp, more or less, and that holds the water when we dump it out. And then other apparatus on the scene, relay pumpers, relay pumper tankers, whatever it may be, would utilize the hard suction tubes such as this one up here with the low-level strainer to then suction or vacuum the water out of that tank and then relay pump it to the primary fire engine that's engaged in suppression. So that is the two principal ways that we conduct water supply operations, either a direct relay pump in alternating fashion, or through drop tank operations where we're dumping water and then that's being suctioned and relay pumped to the other trucks. Briefly, we will hit on the equipment on this truck. It's a very cut down version of what our engine companies carry. So we've got some fans on here, saws, our ground monitors for large fire flow operations, remote from the truck. I've also got a few more adapters for supplying water via hose into a drop tank if necessary. Spare bottles, we've talked about the drop tank on here. We've got some long hooks, ground ladders up top there, the supply hose also 5-inch, and some auxiliary supply 3-inch up top there that's hard to see. A few more hand tools here on the back tailboard. Our fill hoses, so if we go to a fill site, be it a hydrant or a water point, normally this is how we fill this truck. These two valves here go directly into the tank. And then on this side, we've got more compartment space, primarily our hand tools, forcible entry and overhaul type tools. Our chimney snuffer for addressing chimney fires is also in there, like the one on the engine company. Air packs, again, this truck, even though it's a tanker, on paper for ISO and DOI purposes, it's classified as an engine company. We do better on our ISO classification by maintaining this truck on a paper, technically on paper, as an engine. So we call it tanker. You know, by the book, it's an engine. That's why it carries the bare minimum plus some equipment to count it as a engine, which does include the air packs you see. So there again, our guys, when they show up, if we've got a few extra guys, whether they arrive in their personal vehicles or on this truck, if they're not needed for water supply ops, chances are they'll be needed for suppression. So that's why we have the suppression tools on here, air packs, and of course we do have actual fire hose for attacking the fire. So 2 cross lays up top, just like on the engines. So if this truck does happen to arrive first, I won't say it's not unheard of, but it's not normal for this truck to arrive first in, be it in our district or in a mutual aid territory, but it occasionally does happen. And so this truck needs to be able to function very much like an engine should that happen, and therefore it can do just that. Various adapters, extra nozzles, flashlights, thermal imaging camera, things like that. A few of the old spare portable radios on here, those are mainly for the water supply operations folks. And then down below we've got our cooler, some salvage covers, a basic medical kit, some search rope, and a few scene management items on here. But as you can see, it's pretty minimal, pretty bare bones compared to most of the other trucks. And then real quick in the cab, there's that, like I said, pretty narrow bench seat, but nonetheless seating for 3. And then in here we keep our portable radios that are normally used for the guys actually doing interior or direct suppression operations. Normally utilize those radios there. And that's pretty much it. Alright, so that is the walk around and the showcase of Tanker 13. Again, I know that's kind of quick and down and dirty, but the biggest difference in this truck and an engine is its size because of the water volume on board and some of the tactics that it uses on scene, and then its ability to dump water, and then kind of where it fits in our department's role and tactics on water supply. That's pretty much it. And then again, the chassis, of course, being a little bit smaller and less people riding on this truck. But again, not a bad thing. A lot of those are just trade-offs that you kind of win here but lose here, and it kind of puts us in the middle of the road, and that's not a bad place to be a lot of times. So we're very happy with this truck. It actually was a used truck. It's actually this happened before I came here, but a small side note, the truck was actually repossessed from a department, I want to say in Alabama, maybe. So the bank or whoever, I guess, held the truck at the time after that occurred, had it advertised for sale at the time. The department heads at the time when this was going on was in the market for a better, newer tanker to meet our needs at that time, and came across this, and it was a good deal, and we're able to obtain it. So we've had it for quite a good number of years now, since before I came here, and I do not recall the exact year that we got it, but we did not receive it in 2011. So again, it was technically a used truck, just like the majority of the ones here in our fleet. So, but anyway, it's a good truck, meets our needs, and you see it out and about, and wonder why it's going perhaps back and forth down the road so many times, possibly lights and sirens. That's possibly engaged in a water supply or water haul operation. So that's something that we have people don't understand. They're like, why does the fire truck keep going up and down the road, lights and sirens especially? And trucks like this, more than likely in that case, what's going on is they're going to a field site and then coming back with fresh water to a fire scene somewhere. So this wraps up the front line, the front four apparatus of our fleet here at the main station. The other frontline trucks in the back are the rescue and the brush trucks, our smaller kind of service company vehicles. So we'll look at them here in the coming weeks. We also have the reserve tanker, and over at Station 2 we have the engine that services Station 2's area. We'll get to all those here in the coming weeks and look forward to having y'all tune in. Thanks. We'll see you.